It's been 70 years since the end of World War II. Some of the soldiers that survived that war are still with us today. Most of them are in their 90s and wrestling with the challenges that a long life has waiting. A few refuse to break eye contact with Father Time and are determined to stare him down.
Well, my goal is to reach 100 years old and still be able to do 100 push-ups.
For all those years since the war, every day, they've gone about their lives, working, having families, being part of their communities, with most of us never knowing much, if anything, about what these men personally saw or experienced during the war. There are dads, uncles, and grandfathers. It's hard to picture these gentle, older men in life and death combat struggles under the severest of physical conditions. But for the former members of the 1st Special Service Force, an elite, highly trained, and highly conditioned group of soldiers, no one was more successful or effective at eliminating and terrifying the enemy. In 1942, they were the first combined Canadian and U.S. fighting unit, and due to their blackened faces for night raids and their heavy kill rate, the Germans referred to them as the Black Devils. Today, the 1st Special Service Force Association, consisting mostly of veterans and family members, organizes tours back to the battlegrounds of Europe, where the Black Devils fought and died to liberate those people in the name of freedom. For the veterans, the trips are a chance to retrace the steps of their wartime memories and visit the graves of their fallen friends and comrades. The family members who go get to see where their ancestors had fought and perhaps died, and to hopefully find answers to lifelong questions about the things that happened there, that shaped those men for the rest of their lives. The legacy of the Black Devils reaches across national borders, mountains, oceans, generations, and time. The effects on the lives they rescued years ago will continue into the future. But how and why did this elite unit come about? Who were these out-of-the-ordinary men that volunteered for such a dangerous mission? We'd have to go back to the dark days of the beginning of World War II to find out. Great Britain was unprepared when, in 1939, Adolf Hitler launched his Blitzkrieg and began Germany's war on Europe. Most of Great Britain's military leaders were primarily concerned with the possibility of Germany landing on British soil, and were initially focused on a defensive war plan. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, however, declared to the House of Commons on June 4, 1940, "We shall not be content with a defensive war. We should immediately set to work to organize self-contained, thoroughly equipped raiding units." These hand-picked commando units conducting guerrilla warfare would inflict the most damage while requiring less manpower and preoccupy a much greater number of the enemy. This approach proved successful, but as the war grew, greater resources were needed, and the British turned to both Canada and the United States to create a combined commando unit. That unit would become the 1st Special Service Force, later to be known as the Black Devils. A secret mission into German-occupied Norway was planned by the Allies, with the intent to destroy Germany's heavy water plants, which were needed to develop nuclear weapons. Codenamed Project Plow, the winter mission was to be conducted by this yet-to-be-formed North American commando unit. The feasibility of such a mission concerned many in the United States War Office. The officer assigned to assess the viability of the project was Lieutenant Colonel Robert T. Frederick. His assessment was scathing. In short, he considered it a suicide mission. However, Churchill's insistence and General Eisenhower's commitment to support the plan meant that preparations were to commence immediately, and ironically, in light of his intimate knowledge of why it wouldn't work, Lieutenant Colonel Frederick was eventually chosen as the right man to command this unit. It was time for Frederick to organize and train the unit that he named the 1st Special Service Force. First, however, there would be the challenge of recruiting and selecting the soldiers needed for this super commando force.